when you realize the stories that you had to tell yourself at different moments of your life, it's not about punishing yourself or feeling guilt about telling yourself the wrong story, because it really is always a story that you needed at that moment.
Welcome back to the Love Stories Podcast. I'm your host, Charlene Byars. I am thrilled to welcome my next guest to the show today. Ivana Maria Delsol is a trust architect, an energetic health consultant who helps people heal and connect through story and self-awareness. She's the founder of Storyplace, a social journaling app that fosters a global community through authentic expression, and The Hidden Broccoli, a personal transformation company that guides individuals in clearing energetic blocks and building intentional, conscious lives. I am so excited for you to hear this conversation and Ivana's journey to self-love, and how each and every one of us has this opportunity to really discover who we are and how we can create the true desires of our heart. So powerful. Get ready for this incredible conversation. And remember, stick around for the tip of the week at the end of the show.
Welcome to Love Stories, a relationship podcast for successful women, where we talk about love, dating, relationships, and how great love stories are made. I'm Charlene Byars, and I'm so excited to share all the things that you can apply to create a beautiful love story of your own. Cheers to great love. Well, hello, Ivana. Oh my goodness, she's here. And what a treat this is today, because not only is she here, Miss Ivana just got back from her honeymoon. Oh my goodness. Girlfriends, seriously, let's just start there. First off, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. It was everything and more that I could have hoped for. And I'm so happy. And some people say like nothing changes, when you get married, and everything changed in the best of ways.
Oh, let's unpack that a little bit here. I just want to say something. I have become such a fan of yours, and I've, kind of stalked you a little bit on Instagram after I knew you were getting married, and the pictures and the levels of the ceremonies and the celebration and all the things was incredible. I can only say this to you. I felt just through the videos and the pictures, the love that you guys had over there. Like, you could just feel it, Mama. You can really feel it. Let's talk a little bit about your wedding and your culture and how celebratory you guys are, and what that was like.
Thank you. I love this question. It was honestly the most magical of experiences. It was a very different kind of wedding. In Mexico, I'm from Mexico City originally, and definitely Mexican weddings are over the top. You celebrate for days, all night, But this was more than that. This was a little bit of a combination of so many different things that were important for me and for him, and more than important, that were present in the relationship. I really wanted this wedding to be an opportunity for anyone who was there or who saw it to be able to explore what we feel in the relationship, and to discover magic, and to discover that connection that each person has, whether you have whether you're tapped into it, whether you're very intuitive to it, whether you're discovering it, or whether you're curious about it, but that connection that you have to yourself, to your self-love, from which you can then love somebody else better.
That's the energy, seriously, that I got from your videos and from your pictures. It was this love. Yeah. It was this love. It was so much love.
Yeah. And I kept telling my friends who were there, because everyone kept saying like, well, what is this feeling? Like, what's going on? Like, what are we inside, like a portal of some sort? And it really was as if, energetically, we just said, okay, what would happen if just for one night, everyone decides to to be in love, to be in the frequency of love. And what would happen? What would it be like? And it really was, there were so many relationships between people, like not romantic ones, but other kinds of relationships that amended certain disagreements, or couples that met themselves in a different way, or people who met themselves individually in a different way. So many stories of people who had that experience, and that was really the idea. It was like a humongous romantic date between Andres and I, and everyone else was just there.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I really genuinely think that is something that let's just say the majority of people, honestly, are craving that type of connection, that type of love. And I really believe this also with all my heart. It's in us. It's available to all of us. And what happens is that, there's so many layers here, right? And when we are not able to express in a way that is so loving and accepting and just really being ourselves, there are things that could be blocking us. There's things that maybe we're not aware of. And I know, and we're going to get, into your history and how you grew up. And, I know that you met your husband, and you guys are like such a great alignment. And there's so much more to this. But let's off. What are some things, because I know she's a writer, you guys just heard her bio, but she's a writer, transformational coach, really helping people find love within and then having that expressed to their romantic partners. I get that. I know, right? So give me something, what's going on here, and why you think people don't have, or sometimes that permission to allow themselves that freedom? Is it something that's going on with themselves? They're not loving themselves? Or let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of self-love, and it's such an interesting thing. I mean, so many different things that happen within it, right? I remember the first time I heard about self-love, which wasn't in my childhood at all, right? Like suddenly along life, I heard about self-love, and I was like, oh, how fun. What an interesting concept. It seems so obvious, right? Like, well, yeah, you love yourself. Why, what does that even mean? And I kept thinking about it, and I really sort of obsessed over this because it was so obvious, and yet it felt so foreign. It felt such a strange thing to really be like, okay, but how do you know if you love yourself? Like, what does that mean, right? And in the end of the day, and why is it so hard, to your point? And in the end of the day, it's really about what kind of relationship do you have with yourself, right? Like, and really, when you think about it, when you, for example, meet somebody new and you want to start a relationship with somebody, or at the very least explore the possibility of starting a relationship with somebody, you do many things. You make sure you look good and that you're presentable, and you put on your best face, and you speak nicely, and you use positive words, and you're present, and you find ways to connect, and all of these things that we do in order to even explore the possibility of a relationship with somebody. And yet very few times do we do those things with ourselves, right? And so the question really for me is, in how well do you even know yourself? That's really where I would start the whole self-love journey, right? How well do you know yourself? We take it for granted, the fact that you know yourself, but you don't necessarily know yourself when you have lived a life in which the world tells you who you are all the time,
Yep.
right? You grow up, and from your parents, and not in a bad way. It's just, as human beings, the world needs to define you somehow so that it knows what to do with you, where to place you, how to treat you, and so it needs to define you somehow. You need definition. And if you don't have the tools or the understanding or the consciousness to give yourself that definition, then the world gives it to you. And you can easily start to confuse the fact that, oh, so that's who I am. But really, maybe it's not who you are. Maybe it's who the world has told you, And so that the exploration of self-love for me starts in evaluating
I love that.
who you are, Like, who do you are, and not based on that, but based on who do you want to be as well. And how well do you know yourself? Take yourself on a date, explore how well do you know your mind, your thoughts, your body, your likes, your dislikes, your boundaries, all of the things that are like the million and one ingredients in self-love,
No, that's
right?
a really, really great way to kind of explain that. I totally understand when you said sometimes we don't even understand. One of the first things that we can do is truly, genuinely understand what is it that we enjoy? What is it that we like? Like, who are we? And whatever that is, it's actually okay. Because if society is
Right.
telling us kind of, and I can see this for so many of us, and especially like whenever you grow up, and like you said, it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just what it is. It really what it is. Some people grow up in all the love, 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 love. Some people grow up no love. Some people grow up this. Some people grow up this. I get it. There's all different ways in our environments and how we grow up. But I really believe this, that because we grow up and how we grow up and where we grow up, and it's our environment, the environment is almost stronger than our will. Because if we are in an environment that is, especially when you're getting raised as a child, and that is pretty much telling us, okay, this is what you're going to be, you should grow up and you're going to do this and you're going to be this and this is, that is what starts really programming us. And we really think, oh, okay. But when you just said, when you start slowing down a little bit and allowing yourself to do some self-discovery, you start
Right.
realizing it's not that you're poo-pooing on your childhood. No, because that was
Right.
your parents' way that they wanted to be, and they wanted to raise, their children and their values and their views and all the things. Great. Take from that, the things that you really resonate with.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it's all of it. So that is really,
Ex-
oh, I love how you said that. What do you think then
Yeah.
also is something that gets in our way to be able to start really tapping into ourselves and exploring that?
It's a very scary
Mhm.
process because suddenly you open this box and there's all these questions that more likely than not you've never asked yourself, that you don't have the answer to, and that's okay. That's kind of the point of this. Um, I remember my personal journey definitely started with that. It was this idea of, what do you want, Ivana? What do you want? Like, you keep complaining about life not giving you what you want, or these relationships not respecting who you are, or these, but who are you, and what do you want? Because if you don't know this, then how do you expect other people to even know this, to respect this, to identify this? And so it was easy for me to, blame the world and all these toxic men that I was attracting. But in the end of the day, it was all a reflection of the lack of understanding that I had in myself. And so a lot of questions, no answers, might seem terrifying, but it's actually a great thing. I think it's like the first phase of a very humbling process of accepting everything that you don't know, and of unlearning a lot in order to make space for new information to come
Love you.
in, and to really explore, okay, well, okay, maybe I don't know what I want or who I am, because also you evolve so much, because the world evolves
Yes.
so much now, more than ever, faster than ever. And so it's only normal that what you want in your life also evolves with you as you evolve, as you grow. And so that's another thing, a part of this, that we're not necessarily taught to reevaluate your dreams or reevaluate, the kinds of relationships you want, the kinds of friendships you want, the kind of job you want. And it's, I think that's part of also what starts to, hold us back from exploring these questions further and further. And so when you start exploring it, all of these unknowns may seem terrifying, also because ignorance is bliss, right? When you don't know, what you don't know, then you're like, oh,
I
okay,
don't know. It's
I'm
okay.
a right. Like life is just nothing but just consequences that happen to me and things, and I'm a victim of all
And
of
they're
it.
like, this is just
But
who
then
I
when you
am. This is just who I
start,
am. This is why it happens. I get bad luck. I have bad luck, or whatever that is.
exactly, or I'm like this because this happened to me, or I don't like this because when I was a child, this and that, and it's like you're just stuck in this definition of what the world told you you are, or of your consequences, as opposed to being like, okay, well, who do I want to be? Like, what do I want in my life? What life do I want to create? And when you start that process, inevitably, you also start to face things that you have to let go of, beliefs, relationships, friendships, a lot of things. And letting go is hard. It's very hard. And so I think that a lot of all of these are like reasons why it seems so daunting, right? Sometimes this path of self-discovery. But in the end of the day, energy doesn't
Mhm.
lie. And if you are not aligned with who you are really, it starts to take a toll, whether you are aware of it or not. Physically, you don't feel well, you're tired, you're not happy, you get illnesses,
Anxiety,
you know,
anxiety.
like,
Yep.
yeah, things start to sort of, when you're in a relationship that doesn't match your energy, doesn't match who you are, it drags you
Absolutely.
down. It like so all of
Oh,
these
that's
things.
so important that you just saying this because you guys, seriously, that's wow. This is so good already. um, the difference between and this is why I love already this conversation is because the way that you're explaining it, and you guys, I already said the work that she does. You know, she is actually a transformational self-love spirit coach, like all the things. But what I love about that is that you're also speaking in terms of your own experience of how now you guys remember how we started this podcast. She just married the love of her life. Like her everyone has their perfect partner for them. There's no perfect person, but there's a perfect person for that person, right? So she just got
Mhm.
married with her man, her king, her all the things, all the things that we talk about, right? We want that man. But it wasn't always like that for you. So take me back a little bit, take me back how you actually grew up and what your views were when it came to relationships and what you wanted, at the time based on, where you were growing up. And, because I obviously know it's completely opposite now. And what started, changing for you. So talk a little bit about that. Take us back.
Yeah, I mean, there's basically a cycle of toxic relationship after toxic relationship after toxic and the word toxic can seem whatever. It can mean different
Many
things
different
in
things.
different cases, but really how I see it is just what I was saying before. When you are in a relationship that does not match your energy, does not with somebody whose energy is here and you're here, and it just does not match. Energy connects with the same frequency energy, and when you're not aligned, it brings you down, it takes you out of your center. You're not able to fully be yourself, or grow or evolve in the best way, right? So I mean, from the when I can remember, 12 years old, 13 years old, I was always in
Your own
relationships. Always.
relationships.
Always. Always. It was like one relationship after another, after another, after another. And I kept just justifying it like, oh, well, I just love being in relationships. That's really all it is. And it wasn't until, and the thing is, the people themselves could seem so different one from the other. So different. It's not like, oh, it was the same guy. No, they seemed so different one from the other. And yet, the way I felt in every single one of those relationships was the same.
You did.
And so, yeah. And so it's interesting because you can lie to yourself in a way, thinking like, oh, this one's different. This guy's different. He's nothing like the other guy. But it's not about who they are. It's about how you feel when you're with them, right? And so I felt the same in all of these relationships. And that was the common denominator. It was anxious driven. It was very, loving tightly. It was very insecure. It was very fear based, always distrusting. I mean, it was just on and on and on and
It
on,
was
right?
probably
And
beyond
so,
draining. I mean, you know what I mean?
oh
Yes.
yeah, so
So
draining, so draining. And it wasn't until, cut to years later, I find myself about to marry the wrong guy.
oh, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that.
And I remember I got engaged, and I had been dating for about 5 years,
You were in a
and I
relationship for
got
about 5 years. So give me an age range. So how old were you when you got into that relationship overall? Okay,
25.
25. So you met this
Yeah.
guy, you're about 25 years old, and then obviously you guys get into an
I was 24
okay,
when I met
24.
him. Yeah.
And you were with
Yeah.
him for 5 years. Explain
Yeah.
a little bit about
5
that
years.
relationship and how it was for you in the beginning, and then what happened as time went by.
I mean, really, it all comes down to the same thing we've been talking about, which is a lack of self-love. I As much as I was exploring the concept of self-love and I thought I understood it, it was a very different thing when I actually finally felt it for the first time.
Mhm.
I had been reading about it. I had been like writing about it. I mean, I thought I understood it so well. I got it tattooed. I mean, and yet I was not living it. I was not
Okay.
feeling it. And so I'm in this relationship, and I told myself so many stories to justify certain situations that would
Like, give me an
happen.
example so
Or
women can hear this, because I can see right now you're going to talk about something that's going to be very relatable to women, that they're in relationships and there's things that they're not feeling right or something's wrong, but they justify it and they ignore themselves.
yeah, of
Ignore
course. I mean, as human beings, we are made up of stories. We tell ourselves stories in order to justify just about anything. And obviously, in the moment, I didn't know that that was what I was doing. But when I look back, and I really looked back so many times, because I was like, how in the world did I put myself through these situations? Situations in which, he would make me question my core values. I mean, things like substance abuse and things like those where obviously now I'd be like, no, I would never put
Yeah.
myself through that
Yeah.
situation. And yet I was there, and somehow it happened, and somehow I kept being there, and somehow I continued justifying this. And when you look back, I'm like, what stories did I tell myself in order to make sense of that? And like, what was the
Yeah.
story? And I really wrote down these stories, and then I went back and was like, let me, instead of just thinking that my intuition completely failed me, let me go back and remember what intuition felt like, because it was there. It's always
Yes,
there.
it's always there.
Whether you pay attention to it or not, it speaks to you. And so instead of being like, no, I don't have intuition, it failed me, that's why I was there. No, it was like, okay, what did intuition feel like? And I started remembering all these moments where I ignored my
Okay.
intuition and taking responsibility over that, and which in a way was taking back my power, right? As opposed to just feeling powerless, being like, no, I fully take responsibility over the fact that I ignored my
Yep.
intuition.
Good.
And so I kept going into those
You
moments,
say, just interrupt you for a
and saying,
second. Just interrupt you for a second. So I'm taking you back a little bit. So you're saying now, after obviously you're not in that relationship anymore and you're looking back, you're saying now you can clearly start seeing now how there were those moments that you actually loud and clear felt it. Why do we do this?
yeah, yeah, truly. It's very, I mean, it's so sad, and it's so hard to take responsibility over it, right? And to accept that you ignored it. But why do we do this? Out of
Yeah.
fear. I mean, out of fear, out of pure fear. Anything you do, you're doing it either out of love or out of
Yeah.
fear. And the answer there is out of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of this man, abandoning me, walking away, of me losing somebody that now I understand also that I was essentially replacing my father figure in so many ways as well. I mean, there's so many elements of why you become attached to people that you know that are not good for you as a romantic
Yes.
partner. And in my case, it was a lot of fear, but it was really also a complete lack of understanding in who I was. That really is true. I thought I was that person who deserved that. I thought I was somebody who should be grateful to have somebody like that. I thought, for example, I thought I was somebody who didn't like sex. Right? I thought I was somebody like all of these things were the stories that I told myself as opposed to the ones that I now understand are to be true, which are I didn't feel safe. Which are I deserve better than that, which are all of these things that I can now rewrite and really understand about myself. But at that moment, I didn't know myself enough to really even establish those
No,
stories. And
yeah, that
so
makes sense. That's why you said earlier, oh my goodness, that's so good. That's why you said
yeah,
earlier how important it is. And I would say, honestly, ladies, yes, when you're in a relationship, but even more than that, if you're not in a relationship, to start understanding this and start doing this type of work so you can actually attract, exactly what you're looking for. So when you were in this, yeah,
100.
yeah, that's so powerful, you guys. That is so powerful. So if you're listening to this right now, this is why we're having these conversations, because she's talking about a story. And again, remember how I started this whole podcast? She just got married. She just got married to the perfect partner for her. But she was obviously in a relationship for 5 years, and she's looking back now and she's like, okay, a couple things happened. I was ignoring that feeling, and I didn't even know myself at the time. I really genuinely didn't know what it was as a woman that I was actually desiring in a romantic partner, right? Like how you wanted it. Let me ask you this. Tell me a little bit, how did you grow up? Did you grow up with a mom and a dad? Were your parents together, not together? What was the dynamics of your parents?
My parents got divorced when I was about 6, probably.
6 years.
Uh, yeah, 6 years old. There was, yeah, I mean, I did not necessarily, I did not have the example of a healthy relationship for
Yeah.
sure. Um, I grew up very close to my
Your
siblings.
siblings.
And yeah, and my mom and my dad separately. Then with my father, there was a little bit of a distancing. And then I actually, which is such an interesting part of the story, but I will get to that. But when I canceled the wedding,
With the 5
that I
years.
was
Okay, we'll get to that too. Okay.
when I canceled the wedding with the wrong guy, one of the first things I did was go see my father. And I completely redefined my relationship with my father, and today I have an amazing relationship with him. And it was after that I finally broke the cycle of the toxic men that I was attracting as partners, and I finally had space for a new kind of man in my life.
Oh my goodness. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about that? Like what for people are like, huh, that's interesting. Can you talk?
That to me is powerful.
That is
It's such an
so
important
powerful because so talk about what the dynamics were. So as you said, you grew up, your parents divorced when you're about 6 years old. And did you
Yeah.
primarily live with mom?
Yeah, I live
Okay,
with my
so
mom.
how often did you get to see dad?
Initially, I mean, I saw him all the time, but then my dad actually left Mexico. He did an amazing thing as a journalist, and he had a newspaper and a news channel, and he exposed some awful things that some people in Mexico were doing, and then he had to flee Mexico after doing
Okay.
that. And so he left Mexico, and it that wasn't really the reason why I didn't see him much. I mean, the first years, yes, but afterwards, I would see him here
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there in the US when I would travel and stuff like that. But I was mostly with
Which
my mom.
you're with mom.
Yeah, and the reality is that when my dad had to leave and everything, I didn't really understand much of his story either. All I knew was also, that he hadn't been a great husband, and uh, and that was kind of the only narrative that I kind of stuck to. And obviously, as a little girl, I think I needed that story in order to protect my
Okay.
heart, right?
Yep.
I was heartbroken because I missed my dad
Yep.
for sure. And so I had to hold on to that story in order to make sense of me, of my life, of everything. Like I said, the stories, it's not about when you realize the stories that you had to tell yourself at different moments of your life, it's not about punishing yourself or feeling guilt about telling yourself the wrong story, because it really is always a story that you needed at that moment in order to protect yourself, in order to go
Yeah,
forward, right?
absolutely.
And so I created that story, and I kind of just stuck to that. And I had no space in me for another story about my
Got
dad. And so moving forward, and I didn't realize this at the time, but obviously, you know, you these father wounds that are so typical, unfortunately,
yeah.
in women especially, whether it is that your dad left or that he was there or that he wasn't present or that he cheated or that what doesn't matter. There's so many versions of this, right? But it really does take a toll on your relationship with
Yes.
men and with the way you attract a certain kind of man, right? This is I'm talking subconscious
Yep.
level creating, which is and it's so interesting, but you really do understand and define men and are attracted to a certain kind of man based on these things that have so much influence on it. And so I didn't realize this until with that guy that I was with for 5 years. Finally, I opened my eyes to the whole situation in this like massive awakening that I had after I found out he was cheating and on drugs and a lot of things. And I was like, what am I doing? Like it was this moment of just I remember I just found out and I was sitting in my bed and I was like, what what am I
What am I doing?
doing?
Were you guys already engaged?
Yeah, yeah, wedding is paid. It's like months to the
So,
wedding.
okay, so you were with the
Uh,
guy for 5 years.
yeah,
Now we're engaged, everything's ready to go. You're like in full planning wedding mode, excited, all the things. And was this information something like you said, you already admitted, and that's cool that you already had all these little like, oof, I'll go down now, something's not right, something's not right. But then it became
right.
so obvious. He got exposed, right? And so
So
okay, so
obvious.
now you're in an opportunity. You're like, it's pretty much
Yeah,
impossible to ignore this.
but it is, and then I realized that it
Okay.
isn't. Uh, a lot of people still ignore it,
Really?
and
Okay. Good.
a lot of women that choose to look the other way because the alternative seems
That's true.
terrifying to do something about it. And so what to me, yes, it felt obvious to me. I was like, well, there's no way I'm getting married. But I know for a fact that a lot of women go through with it,
Mhm.
right? Or are
You guys
married
said
in
to
our
her.
in our
No, listen, this is really important that you're saying this. Even
yeah,
though
I
it
mean
became
it's
obvious, and even though you can look back and you said there was all these signs, I ignored the signs, and now it's like right in my face. I absolutely
yeah,
believe you. I think what happens in those moments that women, obviously they can go right or they can go left. But if they're in a place, like you said, that you are truly not having self-love for yourself, that's what something shifted with you. You started having a different self-love for yourself. Because if you are completely not shifting or understanding that, I absolutely see how women have said to me so many times, I knew I shouldn't have married him, and I did. I
Right.
knew he
And
wasn't the right one,
also,
and I went through it. I found
yeah,
something, and I still went through the marriage because I was embarrassed, and I didn't and we already spent so much money, and I didn't wanna call it off, and how was I going to, disappoint all these people? So they make it more about, and I get this, you guys, I mean, I totally understand this. They make it more about, like, disappointing the people. What would people say? What am I gonna do? How am I not gonna have this person alone? Am I gonna be alone? All those things. So I can see why people go through it. It's not the right thing to do, but
there's so many factors of why, and also in these moments of realizations, I think that there's a misconception that where people think that it's that you get the realization and you're like, oh, I'm done with it, and I don't, I'm strong and and everything's fine, and it's like, no, no, it is beyond uncertain and terrifying, and it's not like that. It was 1 second of a moment where I had a bit of clarity, and I held on to that clarity for dear
mm,
life, and I held it and said, I cannot get married. How? I don't know how. How am I gonna cancel this? I don't know. How am I gonna tell people? I don't know. How am I gonna I don't know, but I know I can't get married. And I made the decision so quick so as not to have time to even question it or come up with any other stories. I was like, I'm not getting married. And I told my mother first because I knew that once I told my mother, there was no
got
turning
it.
back. And I told my mom and I said, Mom, I'm not getting married. And she said immediately, don't worry, I'll take
Oh,
care of
you're
it.
giving me
I,
goosebumps.
yeah. She
Because
was
what you
amazing.
did, it takes courage. It
Yeah.
takes courage to do what you did. And for you
Yeah.
to be so fast and tell your mom to get that extra courage and to be like, okay, I got someone on my side here. That is so powerful.
Yeah, it was very, very special. She asked no questions. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. She was like, no, it's okay. No, no questions needed. Right. And so, um, I knew nothing of what was going to happen in my life after that. I mean, it was so uncertain. Everything was so uncertain, but there was a freedom that was impossible to deny. There was such a sense of freedom that I was like, oh, what is this? Again, intuition, all the intuition that I ignored, it's like it came
Came
out
out
like,
and she's like,
oh, wow. I thought I was gonna collapse and just be a mess. And we don't give ourselves enough credit because when you do something that aligns with who you are and you choose self-love, no matter how hard it is, yes, it'll be hard, you'll cry, you'll be sad, whatever, but you will fall and collapse on a bed of roses.
oh, that's beautiful.
And it was like that every day after that was like, okay, one more day, and I kept thinking, oh, today I'll probably collapse, today will be the day where I collapse completely, and it never came. It was just this, yeah, it was hard, and it was a process, and the first thing I realized was I need to be alone. I need to be alone, and I need to know who I am before I even go to before I even text somebody else. Like, I have to know who I am and be alone. And so I spent Christmas alone, New Year's alone, a birthday
Powerful.
alone. Uh, I went traveling alone with so many questions, no answers, but just questions. And I kind of just pose the question and let the universe, God, answer them, and 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 it became a very, very incredible process. And in that process, I write a lot, obviously, and I write letters that I never send. They're just for
Yeah, yeah.
writing, and I was writing a letter to my ex, and I was like, "Oh, this and this," and midway through the letter, this letter suddenly turns into a letter to my dad. And I was like, "Oh my god, this is so creepy." And I was on a plane, and the moment I landed, I bought a ticket to go see my dad, and I was like, this ends here. Like, I refuse to keep meshing these wounds and things, and I went to see my dad, and I had the most incredible days just getting to know who he is, just listening to his stories. Fascinating man, fascinating stories. And I just sat there for days listening to him and learning about who he was, because of course, how am I going to know who I am if I don't know who my father is, which is the energy that created me, right? And so I I truly found a new deep appreciation for what my father was, and therefore for who I am. And 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 like that, I stopped being attracted to the kind of men I had been attracted to.
That's that's
Um,
so good. It's so good. Can
yeah.
you talk more about thank you for sharing this. Can you talk more about how powerful it is to put pen to paper, for the listeners to
Oh,
understand this process and you organically did it then. And I know you're a writer, but that you don't have to be a writer to do this. But you organically do it, and how it actually, like you just said, was able to get this all out and it changes. So if
I always have a notebook next to
okay,
me.
so can you
Like,
talk about
I
that?
need
So if you do, look at your notebook. So ladies that are
like
listening right now and they're like, oh, I, I have a lot of anger, I have a lot of frustration, there's a lot of things that I'm not aware of. What a beautiful tool to start with. Can you explain that, how that works?
yeah, journaling is incredible. And I say journaling because writing and journaling is not the
Okay,
same thing for
journaling.
me. Uh, Writing, can seem unattainable, intimidating, whatever, structured. Whereas truly, I'm talking about pen to paper with no idea what you're about to write. That is the kind of journaling that is so transformative and powerful. And in my opinion, hands down, the best tool for getting to know yourself.
Oh,
The best.
that's
The
beautiful.
best.
That is
Like no doubt about it.
That's
Yeah.
okay, because you know what, I want you to talk a little more about that, because I think people hear often and they don't understand the depths of it. They hear, journal, journal. I mean, seriously, my whole life, I had no idea what that meant. And I remember, and I think it's because I came from a culture, Cuban culture, that there was no journaling, there was no, counseling, there was none of that stuff. But when I started learning and I started growing, I started understanding the power. And when I wanted to journal, again, like you just said, I didn't even know where to start. So can you,
Yeah.
if someone's listening right now, can you tell them how to start?
Yeah. Journaling, really the best way to start is take out a piece of paper, take out a pen. Doesn't matter, a piece of paper, a journal, whatever it is you want to write on, or a computer, but I prefer hand
Pen
and
to paper.
paper.
It's more powerful, actually.
And if you don't know where to start, just start with the most basic question, which is also the question that is probably answered the least honestly, which is, how are you? Right? And if you need to, write it down. How
Oh, I
are
love that.
you? And then look at the question and then answer it. And then you'll probably need to write, okay, how are you really? And then
So good.
and then answer that question and let it first feel the answer. You don't need to think about it. Like, how are you really? And immediately you're like, you start to feel, how are you? And then just write. And it has to have no structure or make no sense to anyone but yourself. And so, you can start in the middle of a thought. You can start, I don't know, I don't understand what this exercise is. Why am I here doing this? Or you can just start, pouring your heart out. But just answer that question and start to create this discipline of checking in with
I love
yourself,
that.
checking in with yourself, having honest conversations with yourself, listening to your body, listening to how you are. I bet you most people that haven't done this, they haven't actually answered this question in a while. right? And so if you don't know how you are at any given moment, you definitely don't know what you need.
That's so good. Girlfriend, that is so good. If you don't even know, say that again.
If you don't know how you are at any given moment, then you definitely don't know what you need, right?
Wow.
Um, it's that simple, and it really is that simple. And so already, if you're able to develop this discipline of this very simple yet profound exercise, you will start to develop this relationship with yourself more and more and more and more and more, and to the point where you won't even need to always go to the paper, because you'll be able to just check in. How am I? What do I need? And so already that is the most incredible step. Of course, in addition to that, there's so many different things you can do through journaling. Like, I write letters to myself all the time, both letters from my future self to my present self when I feel stuck. They always start with, "Dear Ivana, let me tell you how beautiful your life
Oh,
is."
Ivana, that's awesome. You guys, did you hear this? I'm getting more chills.
And I start telling myself how incredible my life is in the future. And then I talk to myself about how I solved something that I'm currently in. And and then sometimes I write letters to my future self. Sometimes I do the opposite. Sometimes I, ask myself questions, or if I'm stressed, or if I get into an argument with my partner. I love doing
Okay.
this. I will get into an argument, and I see the like younger versions of myself coming out to fight and all of these things, and then I just take out my notebook and I write the first thing that comes, and it's like, I don't know, sometimes it's just oh, I can't
Yeah,
stand him.
that's good. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
it. Like, oh, I can't stand him. And then I read what I wrote, and as if I was a friend listening to this, I'll ask a follow-up question. So, and with a different color pen. So I'll write, well, what can't you stand?
Oh, you're
And then,
so good. This is such a good tool.
yeah, it's the best tool. I have the most crazy, insane, profound, honest, transformative dialogues with myself through this exercise daily. I mean, with anything. And I mean, all the way to the point that I actually developed a whole app for journaling,
Oh, talk
um,
about
and
that.
launched
Go
it.
talk about
I
that.
launched, yeah, it's called Storyplace. I launched it about 6 years ago, and there's guided journaling. You can read other people's journals. You can share stories with people. There's all these prompts to help you deep dive into certain subjects through prompts and answering questions. I believe in journaling more than any other tool
I
out
love.
there. Um, it's the most incredible way to get to know yourself, to build a connection with your voice, with your energy, to organize your thoughts, to never be alone, never be lonely again in your life. You start to realize that you are your absolute greatest company.
Oh, wow. Ladies, that was powerful. That was really powerful. What a beautiful tool that we all can do for ourselves. And when you started journaling immediately, in a way, after you left that guy, and how you said that you were journaling, and how powerful it is to allow you to go and, talk to your dad and get it out and change. And I'm sure your journaling, you guys seriously listen to this, is one of the ways that you were able to find your man now. And
Oh,
yes,
definitely. Actually,
talk about that. Talk about that.
fun
Okay,
fact,
that.
in
Let's go.
yeah, a month before the
Okay.
wedding, sorry, a month before I met
Okay.
him,
Your husband that you just
I
got married to just recently and had the most amazing wedding. And you look like you're glowing off of this. I'm not kidding. I haven't seen it. Like, you're glowing, mama. You're glowing right now.
yeah, I feel
Yeah.
it. Um, yeah, a month before I met him, I was in a spiritual retreat, and I was writing and writing and writing. and I wrote, the kind of relationship I want to find. And I wrote it in a way, it was like, a relationship where I feel safe enough to be myself, a man who knows, blah, 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 blah. Somebody who loves himself enough in order to love me well.
Yes.
Somebody who, like, I started to write this whole piece of writing about this relationship that I would soon find. And it was all entirely focused on how I wanted to feel in a relationship. And that's super important for me in terms of, even the concept of manifesting. I focus on how I want to feel, but I don't assume to know what feeling that looks like.
That's really
And
important that you're
so
saying this. This is why, I love that you're saying this, because this is the confusion that people have when they come to writing it down instead of just writing down. When people say, okay, write down your ideal man.
right.
It's not just the external stuff. It is a
No, for sure. It's about how do you feel?
Yes.
How do you feel when you are with this ideal man? That is what you should be focusing on. The rest, you trust that you don't actually even know what it looks like, because if you would, you wouldn't be doing this. So, if you jump to assume that you know what this looks like, you will limit yourself because your perspective is limited.
Oh, I love that.
So, and so I focused on, okay, I want to feel this and this and this, as somebody who makes me feel this and this and this and this and this. Anyway, a month later, and I finished the writing with, so it is, I can't wait to meet you in a few weeks. That was the end of that writing. Okay. A month later, I met him, right? And for the wedding, I actually took that piece of writing and turned it into the table. So in the tables, there was lit up writing that was that piece of writing.
More goosies. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that's
it was very
incredible.
Special.
So for the listeners today, that they are just genuinely just like me. I love this conversation. And you have also genuinely have sparked up something that I was doing for a while and I kind of forgot to do, and how powerful it is. And I hope each and every one listener, like seriously, I don't care if you're married, not married, single, male, female, it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
You write.
Of course it does.
Yeah. And you write in a way that when she said, and how you want to feel and what you're feeling, oh my goodness, girlfriend.
It is so powerful.
So powerful.
And you know what, for those people that are a little bit, what's the word? That are a little bit more, it's difficult to believe in these kinds of things. Let me remind you that this is nothing out of the ordinary. It is the same thing than, when you say, oh, I want to buy a red car. And so suddenly you see all red cars everywhere because your attention and your energy is directed, it's focused because you have decided that there is this one thing you want. And so now you see it. Whereas before there were probably the same amount of red cars, but you don't even see it. And so it's the same thing, the importance of knowing what you want and being specific and clear and establishing, this is how I want to feel. Because then when you actually come across somebody that makes you feel that way, it'll be like bells ringing, right? You will identify it in a much better way. Whereas if you don't even know what it is that you need or want or how you want to feel, you won't necessarily recognize it, right? And remember, you're trying to manifest something that you've never experienced before, probably something different to what you've experienced before, something that breaks your patterns. And so how are you going to know when this thing that is completely new to you presents itself?
Perfect.
Right?
No, seriously. Right. Wow. Do you know that we just talked for a whole hour?
Oh, wow. That was so fast.
No, can I just ask you this? how do they get in your world? Tell them exactly, how they can work with you. What's the best way to start, finding you? What do you have going on? Do you have, like you said, you had an app, do you have programs, you do one-on-one, all the things. Tell us.
Of course. Well, if you want a journaling app, you can go and download Storyplace. It is completely free. It is completely easy to use, and you can use it for journaling, for connecting with other people. It's a safe space to journaling
Okay.
community.
We'll
Um,
leave that in the
if
show
you,
notes. Say it one more time. We're going to leave this in the show notes.
yeah, it's Storyplace.
Storyplace. Okay.
Storyplace, and the handle is at my Storyplace. And then if you want to work on self-exploration, self-discovery, self-love on one-on-one sessions, I'm currently working with people one-on-one and also doing workshops here and there. It kind of depends when they come up. So I don't have a specific schedule at the time, but we usually post it. I will post it on my socials at Ivana Maria or at Hidden Broccoli. And Hidden Broccoli is the new company where I am creating all of these tools for people to be able to really get to know themselves and build a relationship with their own energy, with their selves, with their consciousness, with the world. Basically everything that we talked about today.
Wow. And what is your Instagram handle?
Ivana Maria.
Ivana Maria. And then you have a handle for that's a different handle too?
Yeah. Hidden Broccoli.
Hidden Broccoli.
The Hidden Broccoli.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You are just a gem. I'm just saying right now. Seriously, I love the work that you're doing. I love how you've had this completely experience of, like you said earlier, not relationships that weren't working out, weren't working out, weren't working out, weren't working out. And then ultimately, that's why this work, you guys, ladies, everyone, it's just so powerful. Because look what ended up happening. You have this, a complete different energy about who you are. You know what you want. You have this confidence in you now, and it's such a beautiful, different confidence. You met your man. He's all, like, oh, this is amazing. Is there anything, that you want to say, obviously before we get off?
I want to just congratulate anyone who is on this path.
Yes.
It is not easy. It is brave. It is exciting. It's nerve-wracking. It's unknown sometimes, but it is truly the most beautiful path I have ever experienced, and I wouldn't change it for the world. And also, I completely and fully believe and trust that every single thing that has happened to me, the good, the bad, the ugly, the hard, the easy, everything is the best thing that could have happened to me. And so, yeah, I mean, how could it not be if it got me to today and here?
That's how we live. That's
right?
Beautiful. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for today.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for today. And
thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you. And to next time, cheers to great love.
Let's talk about the tip of the week, which is the most important relationship you will ever have is the one that you have with yourself. Here's the thing. So many of us are out there searching, praying, and preparing for the perfect partner. But the truth is, we attract what we believe we deserve. If deep down you fully don't love, value, or honor yourself, you either repel healthy love or you settle for less than what God intended for you. So here's your prompt for this week. Write a love letter to yourself. Yes, you heard me right. Sit down, take a deep breath, and write a letter to yourself as if you were the love of your life. Tell yourself everything you wish that someone would say to you. How proud you are, how beautiful you are, how worthy you are, how lovable you are, and how much you're growing. Read it out loud. Feel it and receive it. Because when you start to see yourself the way God sees you and the way the right man will see you, you become magnetic. And that's when everything starts to shift. Thank you, Ivana, for allowing us to look within and start the process of journaling and how powerful it is. That's a wrap. I got so much out of this conversation today and how powerful it is to truly discover self-love and the tools and the things that we can do to start the process. I hope you take the time and start journaling exactly how Ivana explained, pen to paper. Start by asking yourself, how are you doing? And allow things to flow from there. Wow. Thank you, Ivana. If you're loving this podcast and these incredible conversations, please hit the subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Don't miss an episode because each week I'll be bringing on guests and experts who will share their knowledge about love, dating, and relationships so you can apply it into your own life. I'll see you next week. And until then, cheers to great love.